Hello there, Inky Fingers here, and this is Inky Fingers Architectural Art. Now in this video I'm going to be drawing not architecture as such, but still something man-made. I'm going to be drawing this old ruined abandoned archway made of stone. Now the point of this is I'm not going to use any colour. I'm going to be using purely these fine liner pens. They're from Uni Pin. These are the ones that are readily available from locally, so these are the ones I get. They're very well good. You can get them in various different nib sizes, and it's archival waterproof ink. So very, very good for putting details in. And this is what this video is going to be about. It's going to be using the pens to render in detail and texture. You could do like cross-hatching techniques, stippling techniques, just virtual dot hatching techniques. There's a few different things you can do depending on what sort of texture you want. And when the picture's done, I think we'll probably use a little bit of India ink, very much diluted, and then just put a few little extra textural marks in to just gel it all together. Now I have actually drawn it out just to save some time, and I drew it just with a Staedtler 3H pencil. I always like using the hard graphite pencils because they just give a nice sort of tone, especially as you're going to be going over them with your pens anyway. And because this hard graphite, it doesn't really need sharpening that often, so you get a nice thin like sharp line, and they're very inexpensive. This drawing I've sort of kept to the picture, but because these are just blocks, I have sort of made up a few blocks. It's not an exact copy. I don't need to be an exact copy, and not especially not because this isn't a picture to do anything much with. It's a picture for YouTube. So there is some, especially right down here, there's some smaller, more fragmented blocks here. I've just made some larger blocks because it's just going to be easier to actually draw in, or to use the markers. So that's the plan. Whether it'll work out, who knows? We'll soon find out. But the first thing to do, of course, is to just ink in the pencil, and so we've got a nice solid black drawing. And before we do the drawing, the pens I'm using, they're going to have, one is a 0.5, that's the thickest nib. That's going to be used for doing the outline drawing, and then the diameter nibs I always use is the 0.05 and the 0.03. Very, very, very fine. And also this pen here, again, is just a 0.03, but this one I've got a little bit of white ink on it because this tells me that this pen, it has pretty much or virtually run out of ink. So it's not as dark or as prominent as the other pens, and this can be a very, very good pen when the ink's just about run out, to give some quite nice sort of very, very, very subtle detail work. So if your pen is running out, never throw it out. It's still usable. So I'm just going to do a little bit of the outline. I'm not going to show it all because we don't need to show it all, but as I said, I'm using a 0.5 mil pen a tip, and if you can see, it is quite a thick tip, which is very, very nice to be able to do an outline. So I don't want to really be too neat, so all I'm going to do is just quite lightly, and again with a little wobble in my hand, I just want to draw the outline, making sure I've got some. So look, it's not straight. It's a bit jagged because this is old stone. It's a ruin. And I'll just leave a little gap here. So this meaning that this stone is not flush with this stone. Because we can put some really nice darks in there, which will give some nice contrast. And notice how I'm holding the pen. I'm not holding the pen down here, which is the detail where to hold the pen to get nice fine details. That's lots of control. I'm having the pen. I'm holding the pen up here. The more you hold the pen away from the nib, the more looser and freer the strokes will be. So I'm just holding up here, which will force me to have much more looser pen lines. And the pen goes up, as I said earlier on, actually the pen, it glides over this paper beautifully. It's got a little bit of roughness in, and you can feel that roughness as the nib is going over the paper, and it just feels so nice. It's quite a matte paper. Now, I know that most papers are matte, but some papers I've used, even though they're matte, I don't know, they just feel like they've sort of got some sort of gloss around them, on them, even though they haven't. It's a strange situation. This paper, you can feel every stroke, you know, under the nib. It's strange, but this is why I really like this paper. So I'm just going to do this, going all the way across the paper until the whole thing's done. And when it's done, I'll be back. Okay, so as we can see, that's the pencil lines inked in nicely using the 0.5 nib. So the next thing I would do on something like this is not to go straight into detail, but to look at these are the bits between the blocks, the rocks. As we can see, it's dark, and I would start to apply the darks. Because once you get the darks in first, then you can it gives you a good judge of the other tones, because we can see here we've got dark there, so in between here we've got darks, we've got a mid-tone there, then it goes into light tones, mid-tones go into light tones. But I always find if I do the darks first, get some darks in, it gives a framework, so you can then judge how light the lights are going to be, what tone the mid-tones are going to be. So to do that, I'm just going to start with this 0.05, and then I'll simply start and put some lines in, like say in this little gap there, which for example, I mean in this, like a gap there, a little gap there. As I said, my drawing is not identical to this. I've sort of simplified it, so which is quite good, because then you can have a little bit of leeway. So we have like a little dark under there, we'll have some dark here, maybe a touch of dark there, and we're basically just separating the stones. And of course, even though I don't really know what angle the sun's going to be just yet, but obviously the sun's going to be up there somewhere. So if it's coming, the rays of the light are coming down, then anything like overhanging, like we can see here, around here, anything overhanging is going to have a little bit of a shadow. And if we put a little bit of basic hatching around there, that gives us that shadow, and it automatically, even at this point in time, it makes it look like it's rounded, it's going around like that, so you can start to see the bottom of it. But this isn't the midtones, it isn't lights, it's just basically I'm putting the darks in. We'll put a little bit of dark there, again that separates that. This part here is very nice, it's a nice gap, so we can stick a nice bit of dark there, and it gives a really nice bit of contrast between that rock or that stone and that stone. I'll just put a little bit there, improvising now. We've got a little bit there which can be a little bit of an overhang. You know what, I'm going to put a bit of dark there just to give that really nice. But as you can see how it's starting to come along, even at this early stage, we're starting to get a nice bit of definement, I should say, along these rocks. There's a lovely bit of dark there we can put in. There's a gap there, that can be a nice big gap. And this is all I'm going to do for everything. So we don't need to see all of this, because it's exactly the same on what I'm doing here. And just a little bit of a dark area there for the dark, again just to show that this could be an overhang over that rock. We'll just do, before I stop, I'll just do like this bit here, so we can have a little bit. Now this is just hatching really, I'm just hatching on an angle. I'll just put a little bit of dark around here, just to separate that from that. And like I said, I'll now do all of this just to give a bit of definement and separate the rocks, and then I'll be back. Right, I've done what I've just said I'll do, and as you can see, I've just put dark hatchings, some just scribbles here and there around where I think you need some darks. And you can see it just separates the stones and gives it a little bit more of a three-dimension look even now. So the next thing I would do on something like this is to look at the dark areas, mainly this around here where the shadow actually is, and any other really dark areas. So what I would do with this, so what I'll do here is I'll just do some hatching work, maybe even some cross hatching along the top, because it is quite dark. You're not going to really see much detail. So all I do here is I'm going to I'm doing this in the direction. Remember, always draw things in the way they go or grow. Now see, stone doesn't grow, but in the way it goes, I'm looking at, let's say, take for example this block here. This block is going vertically, and so it'll go a sort of an angle around here. So I'm going to do the hatching, or maybe even the cross hatching, sort of vertically. So I'm just going to do some hatching there. Maybe it's a bit of cross hatching something like that. And then this block here, again I'll do the same thing, and this is still with the 0.05 pen. A little bit of cross hatching, again just to darken it up a little bit, and I'm going to continue doing all of the underside of this arch. But one thing you can see, because I'm not doing too much cross hatching, I've only gone vertically and then on an angle. I'm not going the opposite direction of that angle, because it's just going to fill it in and fill it in until it's going to be black. Yes, you might think, okay, we want it dark, but we also want some of this nice little texture work to show detail. If we do it too much, it's just going to be solid black ink, black pen, and it's not going to show, it's not going to look nice, or it's not going to look right. So if we do this, we've got this texture showing, which is, that's what we want. And at the end, when I put a little bit of dilute ink on, then I can go over this with some quite dilute ink, and that's going to make this underneath this archwork even darker, and it's going to make it accentuate the shadows. And yet you should still see, because it's just going to be an ink wash, just like a thin watercolor wash, like a glaze, if you can want to think of it like that. But it's going to be so thin that you're still going to see this hatchwork, and you're going to get detail. So it's looking okay even now. So I'll continue with the rest of this underneath the arch, and then I'll come back. So I've completed the underneath of the arch. So we should be able to see on the video that you can see the hatching, the texture. That's what we were after. I've gone a little touch darker as the arch goes in, just so again it's giving a little bit of a difference in the tonal values between the foreground and the background bit. And I've also gone around the blocks a little bit with the pen like this, so we can see individual blocks still. So it's not just one dark solid mass underneath. So now we've got the dark in, we can start. I'll start on the top of the arch and stick some really sort of more light tones in. Because how I like to do things like this is we have, even though that's a light tone, we can see that's more of a medium tone. Well, I like to do things in a light tone first, even on the medium tone, and then just go over them until I get the tone that I like. Mainly because I'm looking around light against dark, dark against light. Even if I'm changing the tonal values on my picture than these, because if I do them all in like a sort of a medium tone, then I may, on another block, it may be too similar. So I would just like a bit of a variability. So you got light against dark, dark against light, so it just looks pleasing to the eye. So anyway, we'll start with this one here. Now again, I'm thinking about the angle, so this is going to be vertical. So what we'll have here is, I'm just going to simply, very lightly, hardly touching, I'm doing little hatchwork, vertical lines, and I'm just basically, if this was a watercolor, this would be an underwash. We've got something like that, and so then I'm going to go over it again. It's exactly the same marks, and of course it will get a little bit darker. Now I must stress again that I'm not putting really any pressure on the pen at this point. And I'm starting to get a tonal value that I want. Now I'll change it to this block here, so it's going to be pretty much the same. Right, now on this block, I'm now half screwing my eyes up to sort of to see the different tonal values. And on this block, for example, I think at the bottom I'm going to make this a little bit darker. So I'm pushing down a little bit heavier on the pen now. Just to make this a little bit darker up there. And then I'm being light again on the pressure. And I'm just looking around to see. I'm looking at the tonal values to this and this, so they're not going to be exactly the same. Now I think going back to this, I'm going to put a little bit of dark around here, and now I'm not doing vertical, I'm doing a slight crosshatch. Just to make it look a little bit varied. And what we can also do at this stage, when you've done a block, is we can imagine say there's a chip out of that block there, or a crack going down here. We put like a little bit of a crack going in here. Just to give some added roughness and age to this block. Now this next block by the photograph is very, very light, but it does seem to have a sort of chunk out there. So this chunk is a little bit darker. So again, I'm just going to, it's a hatch work, and then with this I'm going to be very, very light. By hardly any pressure on the pen. I put a little bit of darker just here because it does seem to be some staining. Again, I'm going to put a little, maybe a little crack, or two. A few little, I'm just making little marks really to give the impression of old rock. But we can see even now it's getting a nice little bit of, it's starting to look like a nice classically looking rock arch. And then I'm just going to now do a little bit more on these remaining stones, exactly how I've done this, and when I've done that I'll come back. Right, I've finished the top arch, nearly finished. I've left a few little bits and bobs here and there, so we can show you just how I put a little bit more detail in. So usually what I do is this stone and this stone I pretty much completed in one go, but usually that was just to show you, but usually I do arrange just like this, and then when it's all done, then I'll start putting details in and other tonal values and such things like that. So say for this stone here, this block here, I want to put a little bit of detail in that. So all I need to do here is, again, I'll just maybe say for example this part, I've sort of just got a little bit in there, so this has got maybe a bit of a chip in the bottom of it, so I'll just do a little bit of hatching just on there, just to make it look like it's flat and then it goes in. I'm going to put a little bit of hatching just here again, so that I suppose it makes it look like the stone is coming out like that, and then it juts in and then out, so it's not a flat block, it's got a little bit of tone, a little bit of shape to it. And also what I like doing is just really just put some little dots, some dashes on the stone, just to make it look like it's little marks. And it's just a very simple way and quick way to give a little bit of texture. So when you step back and look at it from a distance that you're supposed to, then yes, it does indeed look like stone. It looks a bit strange when you go quite close, up close, but then anything you do looks a bit strange when you go up close, because you can see exactly what it is. Just a splodgy mess of markings or whatever. This one I've just put some very light hatching on. This needs a lot of work, well, some work done to it, so what I'm going to do here is I will perhaps put a little bit of hatching just here. It's making cross hatching now actually. So it looks like maybe the top of the stone is darker. And then we go down a little bit. And now again, I'm sort of half screwing my eyes up as I do this, just so I'm just seeing light and dark. I'm knocking out most of the midtones. And I put a little bit of just some dots, some dashes, some markings. And I think I'll stop there. I may do something else with it later on, but it's always good to now go to these other bits. So right, we go to this stone here. Now, this stone is laying flat, so the direction we now draw texture or tone is it's not going to be up and down like or vertically like these stones, because these are definitely vertical. This is laying flat horizontally, so now I will just do the same sort of thing, but I'm going to do it horizontally and just get like a base tone in, nice and light. If we do too dark, we cannot make it lighter, but we can make it darker. And again, I'm not putting any real pressure at all on this pen. So there's a nice light tone. So we've got this bottom. Well, I'll actually show you the photograph. This is the rock we're doing, and as you can see, we've got some cracks, and because it's laying flat, we've got to do things horizontally. So all we do now is we'll just really press down a little bit on the pen and make a little crack there. We make it's just lines. I mean, we'll do a couple of lines just there to make it look like it's got a few cracks and crevices there, because that's underneath there. I'll just put a little bit more hatching. Now it's cross hatching because I'm going the other way, just along there, just to give maybe the bottom of this a little bit more of a rounded shape. I mean, we're not drawing in Lego. So this rock now looks like it's got a nice bit of texture. This one down. Okay, now we're looking inwards now, so I'm going to just do a slightly darker tone, like so, vertically, and then I'm going to do this part lighter but horizontally, and having the two different directions, that side vertically, that side horizontally, it does define the shape a lot better. And if it was all this way, all vertically, it's just, you're not going to get much definition, I don't think so. And so that's that in for now. Again, we might do something else on it. Now all these rocks here, I'm just going to do a one tone just to fill them in, and then I can decide whether to do any darker tones or whatever. It's just a very quick way to fill them in. Gets rid of the white paper, because all this part of this of the arch is quite light. It is catching light, but as I said, I don't really know where I'm going to put the sun. I might just leave it like this. So again, just nice lightly pressured lines, and it gives a very nice sort of tonal value, a beginning tonal value, a starter tonal value to this part. And when you look at this to the dark, it does look quite nice. Now one or two, I think I probably will just put a little bit of dark here and there. Again, just giving it texture. I'm not looking at the photograph, I'm just looking to see where I think it'll look nice. And I'll do exactly the same with this side here before we start on with the outer. Right, so I've done this side. I've done it a little bit darker than this side, because I think I've now decided, whether I've thought it out or not, that the sun is now going to be coming down at an angle like this. So this is why this side is more lighter, this side of the arch is more darker. So that's the decision made, whether I like it or not. And I have noticed that when I was explaining this bit, that the camera was only up to about there, so you didn't actually see me do this bit, so sorry about that. But anyway, it's looking nice. It's starting to look like a nice classically looking pen drawing, and so far we've just used the 005. We haven't even used the 003 yet. We might get away without using that. Next is we've got to do these, and this is going to be pretty much the same sort of thing, but because they're big, we've got some bigger blocks, we can afford to put maybe a little bit more detail in them. Maybe it's a little bit of stippling. For example, if we do something on this rock here, again, I'll just do what I usually do, just get a very light tone on it. We've got to get that tone on. And then, if you want to sort of like more of a pockmarked look, then you could just simply, we'll zoom in on this, we can simply do a little bit, just simple stippling, like so. It can be effective. It just takes much longer to do. We'll do a little bit of stippling around there. little bit more so we've got nice and dense. But with the stippling, see, it looks rather nice. And what I can do is I can make a rock appear much more rounded than having the straight hard lines. Now we can still do a little bit of a crosshatch over parts of that. Just to make it look like it's got texture. Do some stippling at the bottom. But that's the stippling method versus the more traditional side hatching, cross-hatching method. It can look nice. It does look nice. Personally, I sort of prefer this method. One, it's a lot quicker, and you can get some really nice, like, dark areas, some nice shadow areas and details. So, so we go back to this. Now again, this rock here is going to be, because it's a slab, it's going to be horizontal. So again, I will just do a little bit of light tonal work just to fill the area in. I'll have it very light at that end. So to make that lighter, I'll just darken this end up a little bit. And then once again, I'll just maybe do a little bit of a crack there. Maybe a little bit of a crack there. A few little dots, dashes here and there, just to make it look like it's pockmarked. It's been there for centuries. And I think that would do for that one. And we'll just do one more, and then I'll continue with the camera switched off. So we'll do this one here. So very light touch. Now you've got to remember that I will be putting probably some ink diluting over parts of this, which is going to emphasize the texture even more. So this I've just put a light tonal value there, and I think on this I'll go over with a little bit of stippling here and there, because there's a bit of stippling in that one. Just maybe it's on around the bottom. Let's see if you can get this round, maybe rounded off a little bit at the bottom. Something, a little crack here too. And there we have another shaded in bit of stone with a bit of pock marking and a little bit of hatching. So yeah, it's coming along quite nice. So I'm now going to do some more, fill it all in, and then I'll be back. So I've just about completed all of the rocks. I've left two blank. So I just want to show this is a 003 pen, but this pen has nearly run out of ink. I know this because the pens that do nearly run out of ink, I put a little white ink splodge. So I know. So what happens with these is that you can get some, you can barely see. It is really tenuous, but you can get some really nice, fainter, more subtle detail. You can really, with this type of pen, with the ink nearly gone, you can really use it like a colouring ink pencil and really do this. And you won't get, I mean, if I tried that with one of the other pens with a lot of ink, you'll be just very, very dark. But this, you can go over and over and you can get this really scratchy little bits of detail. It just really looks nice. And you push down a little bit harder to get a few little chunks and little marks, like we'll do a bit on here. Push down, it's still very, very light, and you can get some nice little bits of details. So that's the zoom out a little bit. So that's the picture all covered in. Now, as you can see, from that to that, it does look like rock. But what I need to do now is I need to emphasize the darks, because it just isn't dark. There's some darks and some lights and some midtones and some lights, but to make it stand out more, I now need to increase the shading here and there, which means I could go over with a pen and just do more hatching, hatch, but it just means it just gets thicker, blacker, and it'll just become a deep black dark area, which we don't want. So what we need to do here is to use some bottled ink. Now, I've shown this in a previous video. I have 3 bottles of ink and have one very dilute, one sort of a medium strength, and one a little bit stronger. It's just remembering which one is which, but I'm pretty certain that this bottle is the mid-toned wash, or will be a mid-toned wash of ink. So all we do here is, I'll show you. There we go. So it's not black, it's a nice sort of mid-toned grey. So all we need to do now is use this and paint in just like a glaze, but with ink. I'll paint in all these darker areas, and what you can see is that it's considerably made it much more pleasing to the eye with the darks. But because it's a glaze, you can still see all the pen work underneath. You can still see that hatching, that cross hatching. As I said a minute or so ago, if I just used a pen and just went hatch over and over and over, it would just become a big black mess. So I've decided, as the sun was coming from this side, so I shall have some shading on this end of the picture. And also what I will do is I'll just, in some of these darker areas which we have around here, I'll just put a little bit of this ink. We've got a nice darker area there. We've got a dark area there, so I'll just put a little bit there. Got some lovely areas just down here, like so. Just a bit around there. And I'll just here and there on the stone itself. I'll just put a little bit, some splodges really, just to make it look like it's some sort of whatever there. It puts a little bit of interest onto some of the stones. Should be using a smaller brush really for this bit. That's an overhang, so if it's an overhang we can put a little bit of the shading on there to make it look like it's overhung. A few little splodges here and there. Not much. Now these bits, we have grass here, which if you look at the photograph is just very dark, looks like grass. So all I'm going to do here is put a little bit of tonal work here, just so this arch isn't just floating on nothing. You see how this paper does hold, or just does take this this ink very well. A few little bits of black there just on the bottom. And then for this area what we need is some bit more diluting. So well, you open this one and I think this is much more dilute. Just pulled out with a little bit of water. And we'll let that dry. Okay, now it's all dry. I'm back in with the ink and I'm just going to put a little bit of dark on these foreground rocks, just to have some, because we know now the sun's coming from this direction, so really they will have some shadow. I'm just going to put a little bit of something on here just to make it look a little bit, could be grass, reeds, whatever. Put a few little whatever just here, and I think we'll just put some of that there, and the obligatory splatter just to give that lovely bit of texture in the foreground. And then clean water, I'll splatter it with some clean water so it will hopefully dilute some of this ink. And I think that is now completed. So now that the picture's done, does it look like old stone? Yes, I think it's quite pretty much a realistic rendition of an old stone ruined archway. So we've got nice textured lines going in the direction of the stone blocks, whether it's more of a square or a slab. The stones are individually distinct by having like a little bit of overlap and shading here and there, and these nice dark crevices that you get where two stones don't exactly meet. That all helps. So we've got hatching, cross hatching, we do have stippling here and there, and at the end a little bit of dilute ink with a small brush and just dot it around here and there. It just gives an extra bit of very subtle tonal variability. So do I like it? Yes, I do like it. It was a good little study. It was an enjoyable little study, and we virtually, well, we have done it all with two pens, a 0.05 and a 0.5. Very versatile. So I hope you enjoyed this little demonstration as much as I actually enjoyed drawing it. It was real fun to do. So if you'd like to see any more of this type of thing, then give me a follow, give me a subscription, and there'll be plenty more like this to come. And if you'd like to see anything else that I do of this type of nature, then you can follow me on Instagram, which you can see at the end of this video. So until then, I'll see you next week, so goodbye.